So I'm Glenn. I'm the CISO for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services in the state of Virginia. And I have a co-speaker with me up here today.
My name is Angus Chen. I'm an engineer. I spend half of my time advise CISO and C-suites and half of my time to do technical work. Today we're here to share our experience with you all. And thank you for coming here.
Yeah, thank you all very much for attending today. We'll go ahead and get started now. All right, so we're going to bring up the next slide. Angus, I know you have a disclaimer.
Yeah, my view and opinions are my own.
Yeah, same for mine. Quick disclaimer for me, I am not a data scientist. I am a CISO. That means I am definitely not the smartest person in this room right now. All right, so we're going to start out. There's no test at the end of this, but there is a test at the beginning. And there's only one question, and I guarantee everybody in here is going to get it right. So by show of hands, what is better, Marvel or DC? So everybody for Marvel? Everybody for DC? Anybody for DC? Anybody? All right. All right, so we're going to get started with this. Today's story is the hero's journey. All right, so this is my journey as a CISO hero. I'm going to tell my story about how we brought about bringing in artificial intelligence to achieve data analytics and security in my organization. So like all heroes' journeys, it's got some ups and downs, twists and turns. There's some villains involved in this a little bit as well. But in the end, we all make it out alive. This is the one story where we all make it out alive. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the hero's journey. So with each hero's journey, I'm not sure if anybody is a fan of literature and book stuff, but the hero journey always starts out with the hero in the quest. So in this instance, our quest is about production data. So I became the CISO of my organization back in the end of February of 2020. And if anybody in the room can remember back all those years ago, what happened about 2 weeks after that, the pandemic hit. So here I am, I'm a new CISO, first time in a CISO role. I'm in a large organization, about 6,000 people, have 12 hospitals I have to look after, and then all of a sudden, hey, remote environment, everybody go home. I haven't really met everybody in my organization yet, don't really know my environment. So I get to go home now, work from home, try to secure all those devices from those home workers, and I'm starting to think through, what should I do as a CISO? And I was like, let's survey the landscape. What is it that I need to protect? And I found very quickly that we had production data in our lower environments, our dev and test environments. So why is that concerning to me? That's concerning to me because these lower environments are not secured to the same level as our production environments. So now we have a lot of risk of possible breaches. And I was like, you know, this could be an easy solve. Right? We'll just generate some test data and throw it in there and everything will be good, and that's easy win, first thing for CISO, easy win. No, that wasn't the case because our business units have a say in what we do in our organization. One of the other problems that we have is that the ability to create production-like test data for our lower environments. And I say production-like data in our environments because I found that our business units wanted to use production data because they knew what the production data was, they knew what it was going in, what it looked like, and they knew what to expect when it came out the other end. And that was their justification. That's why we have to have production data. So we couldn't just hodgepodge some test data and gibberish or whatnot. We had to have something that looked and felt exactly like our production data. So the next problem that I ran into was data sharing. Because I'm in healthcare, we have a huge demand for our data from researchers, from academia, and such. How do I go about sharing that data safely and securely in a timely manner? Plus, we have privacy protection regulations. So when you overlay all that together, what we find is that there are lengthy agreement negotiations. I don't know if anybody's a lawyer in the room, but I have learned that when you deal with lawyers, that words mean things. And at the end of these lengthy negotiations, a lot of times the words prohibit us and the business from doing what the business wants to do. And then that becomes, oh, that's security's fault, right? And security becomes this roadblock or this hindrance to the business. So the business finds ways to go around those roadblocks. And I think everybody in the room that is a security professional can understand that. So before we go too far into the hero's journey now, like all stories, the hero has to find the wise wizard. And that wise wizard kind of educates the hero a bit on different types of tools and solutions that they can use to fulfill their quest and be successful. So in this case, our wise wizard today is the wise wizard Angus. And I'm going to turn the stage over to Angus now and let him talk a little bit about the solutions that I implemented in my environment to help us achieve the quest.
So as I mentioned, half of my time I spend advise CISO and C-suite. And so I try to set a level that you all security leaders will understand. And just hang tight, we won't go into any formulas or anything. I mean, this is exactly what I expected, right? I mean, there's so many tools out there. This is not what we are here for. What I'm here for is to make sure you understand high level of different area and to be able to make your decision. Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that help machines to do better jobs. And let's put artificial intelligence in the context of humans. Human brains is a web of neurons that tells your body what to do. For example, we can talk to friends, think, and do things such as text messaging. We can recognize symbols, we can see things, we can move things around. That's what human body does. And there are tasks AI can do better job than humans. Therefore, we hand that to the AI to do a better job for us. So here are 4 areas of AI I would like to convey to you. Machine learning. Machine learning is to use to classify and make decisions with a vast amount of data in multi-dimension. We can use machine learning to classify. We can use machine learning to make prediction. For example, we can classify customers by ages or demographics, or we can make predictions how likely my customers will switch to the competitors. Statistical learning, speech recognition. We use Siri to play a song without interfering while we're driving. Natural language process is one of the ChatGPT, the algorithm that's used by ChatGPT. Symbolic learning is to use symbol to represent relationship and patterns. One of the example will be the police officers using facial recognitions to identify suspect. Neural network. It's a branch of AI, and it's also under neural network of deep learning. Deep learning simply it's acting like our human brains and can do more complex tasks with multiple hidden layers. So when we train AI models, we need vast amount of data with computing power. What algorithms I'm about to talk about, it will help us to create a synthetic data to train the models. So this chart, hypercycle, just give you an idea where synthetic data at right now. It's at the peak of expected overinflated expectations. Everybody will get excited about synthetic data, but sometimes we might need to think about what can we actually use it for, and maybe it's not there yet. So there are two ways to generate synthetic data. One is to use real data. What you're seeing on the screen is using GAN, generate adversarial network. On the right-hand side is an actual horse. On the right-hand side is the zebra pattern laid over to the horse. And another way of generating synthetic data is to use real-world data. So what you're about to see in the next screen, you're going to see on the right-hand side is command line, and I'll launch Jupyter Notebook that most of data scientists has using on its own laptop, and then has the Jupyter Notebook on the left-hand side. And I will enter Python codes, running the library, insert the library, running the codes, and see the output. So here I'm calling Jupyter Notebook. You bring out Jupyter Notebook on the left-hand side. And I'm using Python 3. Over this area, you see multiple libraries, for example, Locale. By the way, this program is called Mimesis. It's robust and very easy to use. These things, you can do it over a weekend and see the result. So right over here is at the library, as I mentioned, the Locale. And over here is so-called the fields. It's just random fields that I picked out. You can use any fields at your choice. So here I'm testing one iteration. I want to see what's the output like. And here's the output. Again, it's a random fields. You can choose whatever fields you like, and it's very robust. And now I'm going to test it, see if I can output 3 different data sets. So it'll be CSV, JSON, and OBJ. What's nice things about Mimesis is it can use in 34, it can create 34 different languages. And as you just see, that this program ran less than 5 seconds or a minute. So here's so I accidentally paused the video, so it won't run. You're going to see the same thing again, but it's just to give you an idea, you can actually do it at home. When you go back to your hotel, you can even do it tonight. It's very, very easy to learn, really easy to pick it up. So I'm going to cut it short because you see the first round that's working. I basically just create another 3 data sets that's with 1,000 records in it. There are different algorithms to generate synthetic data. Symbolic minority oversampling techniques, also known as SMOE. You normally use in the situations you have a majority data or majority class overwhelming the minority class. An example would be credit card fraud cases. You will have a lot of non-fraud cases versus small numbers of fraud cases. So what you can do is to oversample the minority class that make it balanced, and in order to train your data, in order to train your model. What's good about it is it's good for the underrepresented minority group and easy to implement. You also might have heard of an algorithm called Adassing. So Adassing is to use in a defined small minority group area. So what it does is, if you picture you have a sample like a scatter chart and little small group of minority in the data set, you want to make sure you sample that small group versus sampling over the entire a certain area that does not have any minority class. The second one is variational autoencoders, VAES. An example of VAES is to create images. Just picturing this, on the right-hand side, you're going to see a Mona Lisa photos going through the encoder, reduce the dimension, and then in the middle part is the latent spaces to drop certain samples in it, and then output with the image with sunglasses over Mona Lisa's face. It's very good for generating diverse output, and the problems tend to create blur image. This one is generative adversarial networks. Most of you probably have heard of ChatGPT. Is one of the algorithms that's using in the ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is built on GPT architectures, and this is the again is the use for the ChatGPT. And what it does, you have two models against each other, and one is the discriminator trying to identify whether it's a fake data or real data. And the good things of this model is can create a nice images, very realistic. The problem of it is very hard to train. So when you go back, small, you can take about a week to a few weeks to build your small model. Variational autoencoders, few months. GAN, 6 months or longer. So here's are the applications of synthetic data. Synthetic data can be used for simulating medical procedures. And medical procedures in the simulation that can help the data, that can help the medical professions to practice and improve their skill sets without putting real patients' life in danger. And the second one is synthetic data can also be used to train autonomous vehicles. So this is done by Waymo. Waymo, they create synthetic scenarios, driving scenarios in the lab environment. So that would help the cars that to react in different driving scenarios, and that without risking passengers and drivers' life. The third one is synthetic data being used for student sentiment analysis. So Norwegian University sent out conduct student sentiment analysis, sent out a survey, but without a lot of feedbacks from the students. What's good things about synthetic data is you can create synthetic reviews, and to help to create a large data set for the study. What it does, it will help the university to understand students' opinion in the online classes. Number 4 is another use of synthetic data in training robotic arms or hands. What it does is use this is done by OpenAI. They create certain grasping scenarios to train the data set. And that data set can also be used for continuously training the models. What's good things about this is normally when you're training the model, it can be time consuming and it also costs a lot of money. By using synthetic data, you'll cut down the cost as well as the time. So people might ask, what are the synthetic data resources out there? Here's a list of it. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to pick the first one, Gradle Synthetics. Gradle Synthetics is using an algorithm called Doppelganger. It's also one of the GNA, and to create a time series data. I'm going to quickly touch on a few of them. So white data, that's good for creating tabular data. ThinPub is created by a foreign university. That's for training the model for example, like a census as well as for the medical records. Okay.
Thank you, Wise Wizard. All right, so once the CISO hero has gathered information from the Wise Wizard of what's available, it's time to evaluate those tool sets. And the first thing that you should do when you're evaluating these tool sets is number one, look to see if the AI that you use is ethical. When we say ethical AI in this case, we're talking about an AI that allows you to look into it, and when it gives you an output, understand how and why it is giving you that output. It's great to be able to trust your solutions, but you also have to verify that what it gives you is the correct ethical answer that you want as a human being. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The second thing you need to evaluate is, does this solution meet your business needs? And not just one, maybe two. And the reason I say more than one is because these solutions can be very expensive, right? In my case, I evaluated different solutions, and I came to one that every time I asked, can I make it do this? And the answer was, yeah, you can do that. Well, can I make it do this? Yes, you can do that. And then I went to the business and asked the business, what is it that the business would like to see from this? And then I went back, can it do this? Yes, it can. Okay, so I think I found my solution, a solution that is multifaceted. And then, most importantly, I had to look internally to my security team and my security office. Does this meet my security regulations and compliance and my framework that I have in place? And once you get all three of those things together and you've evaluated that, then I would say that you're ready to go to the implementation. But before we do that, we have to go through the abyss. And in this case, we find our CISO hero descending into probably the scariest place for CISO to be, the boardroom. This is where we have to go and we have to justify why we need budget, why we need the things that we need to do, right? So I just want to remind everybody just real quick what our quest was, right? Our quest is to remove production data from our test and dev environments, from the lower environments, to reduce risk, to generate quality test data at volume so that we can train the AI to do the things we want to do in the business cases. We want to reduce the timeline it takes to create sharing agreements, and we have to be in compliance with all the privacy regulations that we have to deal with in healthcare. So as I found myself going and talking to the in my case, it's not a board of directors, it's senior enlisted or senior leadership team, but that's our board of directors because I'm in the public space, and talking to our commissioner and explaining these are the risks and these are the things that we need to overcome. I took a step back and said, you know, I'm going to come at this at a different angle. How is it that this can be a business case instead of a security case, right? Now I'm going at it as this is not for security's sake. This is something we need to do to protect our business, protect our data, and save us money, right? You start talking about return on investment. And return on investment, what does the ROI look like? What is risk? And I had this conversation today at lunch, right? Risk equals the threat times the severity of the incident times the likelihood of the incident occurring, right? So whenever you're able to gather that information and present that to your leaders in a way that they understand, and not just from a security perspective, you have a better chance of being successful. And I found myself very successful because I partnered with the business. And I say that because that's where the battle really begins. When you go to your business units and you're talking with them, because they're all, security is the guys you always say no, and we want to get out of that business. And I talk to a lot of people and they say, yes, but. Well, I don't want to be in that business either. I want to be in the business, let's make this happen in the most secure way possible and not hinder the business. And I was very successful in talking the business through that we're here with you as partners, we're going to enable this and get you through this. And I found that speaking their language was the key to my success. And when I say speaking their language, put it in monetary terms. Average breach for ransomware. What does that cost us? About $4.5 million, right? We have 3 environments, production, dev, and test. So now you take that and you multiply it by 3, and that's your liability. So now we're looking at about $13 million across the board for one application. In my organization, I have 100 applications. Again, I'm not the smartest person in the room, but that's about $1.3 billion worth of liability that I have in my organization. Where does that liability live? It doesn't live with me. My job is to protect the things. The liability actually belongs to the business. And when I sold that to the business, that if something was to happen, where's that money going to come from? It's coming from your budget. Then they set up, oh, wait, let's partner. Let's be friends for a moment. And that was the point where the table started to turn, the tide started turning in my favor. And I was very successful at going back to the CFO and explaining, this is what we're dealing with. Now, I will be completely honest, you cannot eliminate production data from all your environments, right? That's a fact. There's going to be instances where you have to have production in your production environments. But let's take a step back and let's look at those environments that we use for analytics. Do we need to have production data in our analytic environment? And the answer is no. If we can generate synthetic data sets, there's a true representation of our production data that has no impact on our analytics. Why not remove that risk, put synthetic data in, so if it becomes breached, we go back to that equation, right? That the risk equals the threat times the severity times the likelihood of occurrence, and the severity in this case becomes 0, right? So now our risk in those environments has become 0. That is a huge selling point, especially to the upper management and the leadership of an organization. Implementation time. So I've won the hearts and minds. It's time to get at it. So we start doing implementation. So before we did that, we had to make a decision, the types of synthetic data that we're going to use in our environments. As we learned from the Wise Wizard, there's 2 types. There's one that's fully synthesized, right? So what environments should we use that in? Well, that's a prime example we can use some of our dev and test environments, right? And then we have production generated. And this, again, is a true representation of our production data. So where do we want to use that at? Well, we talked a lot about data sharing, right? This is a prime example where we can use that in our data sharing. No more data sharing agreements. So that we've found success in one of our quests, right? We were able to reduce that time frame and no longer delaying the business, and now the business is enabled, and we're building great partnerships and we're sharing our data. But we moved away from data sharing agreements. We no longer talk about data sharing agreements when it comes to synthetic data because the rules don't apply. There are no privacy rules. There's no regulations. There's no compliance there because it's all made up data. I was told at one time that it takes 3 data points to be able to reverse engineer any data set back to an original owner of that data. With the implementation of the solution that we made, all the data sets or all the data points are considered private, so all data points are changed. So there's no way it can be reverse engineered. Prioritization. The next step in that was let's sit down, let's talk through which data sets do we want to synthesize first, second, third, and so on, and implement that. So we decided dev and test because that was my number one problem, right? Let's get the production data and test. And of course, the business backed me on that because I showed them the cost of what it would be to them if we had a breach. The second piece after that was the data sharing, because we have a tremendous need and desire for our data. AI. When we started looking at the different types of AI, again, we talked about ethical AI. For us, ethical AI was very, very important. We were looking to use synthetic data sets and AI to do analytical work and do predictive outcomes of treatments. What are the best treatment plans for our patients? And that's where the ethical AI come in very important to us. Just a quick story, and this is one of those what if stories, so a little bit of a mind puzzle, if you will. Let's say that we have an AI and we use it to do analytics on predictive outcomes of treatments, what are the best treatment plans, with the caveats that we want to save time, because doctors and nurses' times are very important. The doctor, she needs to get to other patients, and money, because money is important for the organization, what we're spending, plus the patient themselves. And oh yeah, this patient is a terminally ill patient. So we ask AI, what's the best course of action? And then what if the AI comes back and says, oh, the best course of action is euthanize the patient because then we're saving time and money and then all the things you asked for. That is not in alignment with our human ethics. So you need to ensure that whenever you implement any AI, that it falls in line with your ethics. Reduction of data bias. What we also found in our data, because we collect it and we're human beings, and when we input that data, a lot of times we have data biases built in because we're humans. Now we can use that AI to review our data sets, identify where our data biases are, correct that, so that when we do put the new synthetic data into other models and machine learning and AI, we've eliminated that data bias. And then finally, the objectives of AI. You have to define those, right? Be very intentional in what your objectives are. Make sure that they are achievable. You have realistic timelines. I would say establish short-term goals and long-term goals. The short-term goals is so that you can create a sense of accomplishment for yourself, because this has been a very long road to get down, but more importantly, you have those wins and you can show back to the business that this was a true investment, not just for security, but for the business. And then long-term goals of where we want to be sometime in the future. So I'm going to read off our objectives that we've created for my organization. And as I read these off, I want you to pay attention and pick out how many of them are security-related objectives versus business objectives. So objective number 1, create synthetic data to be used in our lower environments, dev and test. Security, right? Because that was one of mine. The second one was to create synthetic data sets to ID data quality issues. Because we can generate that, have the AI evaluate it. Is that a security? Is that a compliance? Is that a business case? A little bit of all, right? It meets my needs from privacy, but it also meets the needs of the business, more so probably the business. The third one is the use of synthetic data to be released to the researchers and those who want it. And oh yeah, something that's really neat about this is now we can monetize that synthetic data, right? Think of yourself as a security person, and now you're going into the CFO's office. Instead of asking for money, I now have a way to be a generator of financials for the organization. That is a huge culture shift from the security world. Everybody sees us as a cost center. All we want is money in our budget and keeps growing and whatnot. But now we can generate money for the business. Let me talk about that for a minute, right? We generate these production-like synthetic data sets, and we can use that true representation of our production data, and then we can sell that, and you almost have, think of it like, who has Netflix? Yeah, so you have different tiers of service, right? So you have the top tier service. I can provide you every day a brand new synthetic data set. It takes no time at all, costs me no money, and I can sell that at a premium, right? Then you have a mid tier where we can sell it. Maybe the data might be 6 months old, a year old or something, but it's still relevant, has some business use there. We can sell that, not at the premium price, but people can afford that, different partners or whatnot. And then I mentioned before, we have a lot of demand from researchers and academia. They don't have big pockets, right? So then we can offer something that is a very low price or free, where the data might be 2 years old or something to that effect. It's no longer relevant to the business, but it's very relevant for our researchers. The next objective we had was the analysis of the best treatment plans for our patients. Again, that is not security. That is definitely business. The prediction of treatment plans and the likelihood of successful outcomes. This one was really important to us. We have mountains and mountains of data, and we have no way to manually shift through that data to find out what are the best outcomes and predict what those outcomes would be successfully for our patients. Now we have the AI that can do this for us. The business absolutely loved that one. And then finally, we can now look at data from census into our models. And this is where it gets very important because especially in my space in government, I'm always having to go ask for money after the fact, right? You go and you ask for money from the government and they're gonna say, "Why do you need it?" Because I do. They're gonna say, "No, what has happened that caused you to need that?" Now we can use this and we can predict out what the population of our citizens will be in 5, 7, 10 years from now, inject that into our data model, synthetic data set, and say, this is what the demand of our hospitals will be. This is going to be the demand on our nurses, on our doctors. And now we need the budget to meet that, not today, but in 5 years from now. And that becomes very powerful in the government space. So now I'm going to turn it over to the wise wizard again, Angus, to talk about the future of AI and synthetic data.
In my opinion, there's a paradox called Moravec's paradox. What it says, robots or AI can do a very specific task and do very well, but when it comes to dexterity as well as perception and mobility, the AI or robots are not able to do as good as humans. Humans are the most intelligent species in the world. On this hero journey, we should learn how to use AI or machines as our co-pilot or our wingmans to help us to get job done.
Thank you, Angus. And so that's the journey's end. That's kind of my story of where I started, the problems that I had to overcome, the solutions that I implemented and still implementing today to get us past the short term to the long term goals. But before we take questions, we want to leave you with a couple of final thoughts.
Yeah. Before this trip, I heard California, it's Yosemite in California. It's the icon of California. It's a wonderful place for rock climbing, and I'm a rock climber. But I didn't have time to prepare, so I hired a guide on this journey. We planned it for 8 hours, and we finished the climb at 6 hours or less, because he was very good. He has 7 years experience, know where to place gear, so I just literally need to take a gear out. And this is the same as your journey and my journey. You should lean on people around you. This is a wonderful, great community, and we should work together and be strong together.
My final thoughts on this is that not any single person in this room can solve all our problems. I'd made the statement at the beginning that I am not the smartest person in this room. And at one time in my career, I was afraid to be not the smartest person in the room. So I felt like I had to know everything. And it's okay not to know everything. Why is that? Because we have a network of all of you together. I know that as I grow through my journey, I can talk with each individual and become stronger. And not only do I become stronger, but our community becomes stronger. And not only does the community become stronger, but also our industry becomes stronger. So just like those superheroes we saw at the very beginning of this, not one single superhero, either a Justice League or the Avengers, could ever overcome the problems they faced alone. They did so together, and that makes us stronger together. Questions? Thank you. Yes? So what I did to validate the success of the AI? Ethical, yes. I worked very closely with our vendor on that, and that was one of the questions I had from the beginning. How do I know that what the AI is going to begin back to me is truly an ethical answer? And we have an agreement with that vendor that they allow us to look into the machine itself as it generates this to ensure that we can make changes to that answer so that it meets our ethical standards. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Right now, I do not have an expert in-house, but I rely very heavily on the experts of our vendor to help us through that. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Doug, any questions? Good question, Doug. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Enjoy California. It's been great. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.